Welcome to a tactical and philosophical history of Manchester United. I'm Wayne Barton, and this is the Football Taught by Matt Busby podcast. To discuss the early days of the club, and specifically the reign of Ernest Mangnall, I'm joined by Charbel Boujaoude to discuss that period. He's a historian and author who specialises in that period of history, including Newton Heath as well. All of his work can be found in the descriptions to this podcast. Charbel, today we are talking about the creation and personality of the 1909 FA Cup winning side, known as the first golden era for United. It's always funny when I look back at these times, and also the first FA Cup under Busby, because everyone looks at the 1909 FA Cup, they gravitate towards it, and like we'd already won the league title before it, we won another one after, but everyone goes back to the FA Cup. And it tells us a lot about how it was seen as a major statement due to the prominence of the competition in those days. So in the last episode, we were talking about the sort of deformation of Newton Heath and the early days of Manchester United. We didn't really talk about United at all, really, but Ernest Mangnall had come in charge. John Henry Davies was leading from above. And there was all this kind of grand ambition about Manchester United. They were obviously beneficiaries of a financial scandal at Manchester City. Modern listeners will be hoping for something similar, I've no doubt. Unfortunately, I don't know about that. But tell us a little bit about the reign of Ernest Mangnall to this point and how he created this side.
Mangnall came to United from Burnley. When United were formed from Heath in 1902, they kept the previous manager, whose name was James West, who had worked hard in a time of struggle, in a time of poverty. They gave him one extra season. Because he had all the money now, he went and bought several players, and that actually put a lot of pressure on him in order to get United promoted at the first attempt in 2002-03. Of course, teams don't work that way. You can play, all the Ugartes and Casemiros and Zerskis in the world, and it doesn't mean they're gonna gel. So he felt the pressure when the next season started, and United had a bit of a topsy-turvy form. He decided that he wanted to resign. So he basically just turned the keys in before they snatched them away from him. And that's when they brought Mangnall in. Mangnall took him years to get United up. So that's how hard the job it was. At that time, only 2 teams got promoted from the second division to the top division. And at one point, there was Liverpool and Bolton there. Bolton were a very good team at the time. So there was some very good competition. Even though United had excellent results, it took until 1906 to finally get promoted to the first division, and they had been out of it for 12 years. So it was all new. They had some good players in there. Mangnall had bought Charlie Roberts, who's considered its great center half ever. Well, it's arguable, but I would say he's one of the top 3 or 4. So they had him in place. They bought George Wall, who was an excellent right winger, who could dribble, who could cross, he could score. I mean, he got over 100 goals for United from the wing. That's how good he was. So they had the basis of a good team, but when they got into the first division, they kind of were in the middle. After halfway through the season, still in the middle. They weren't. They were doing well, just staying in there. But then what happened was that scandal at Manchester City that you were mentioning. All the Manchester City players and directors were suspended by the FA because they were getting illegal payments. The directors were banned for life. All the players were banned until January 1907. Except Billy Meredith had been banned before for about a year, and then he was also banned with the rest of the players. So now his ban was a year and a half. So he decided to join United in the summer of 1907, but 1906, sorry. But because he was still in place, he couldn't play till January 1st, 1907. Now, a month before January 1st, the FA decided that Manchester City could auction off all their players so that other teams could buy them. And that would give them a month to get ready for whenever their ban is over. They would have clubs and they'll be sorted out. So they held an auction at Manchester City's ground. right after fate had it that United were at sea that day. So they decided to hold the auction right after the game in the boardroom. So all the club directors from Everton, Bolton, everywhere, they were in the stands waiting for the game to finish. Mangnall, because he was United's manager, he was down on the touchline. So he was he was freer in his movement. As the game finished, as soon as the referee blew the whistle, he rushed in, went into the director's office, or the president's office, before other chairmen could make their way there. And they basically locked the door. And he stayed there with the city chairman and just basically told him to name his prices. So he ended up buying 3 of the best players: Sandy Turnbull, who was City's top scorer, Robert Burgess, who was England's left back, and then another striker called Jimmy Bannister, who was essential because he was the link man between the midfield and Billy Meredith. So you're signing Billy Meredith, you might as well get a player who knows best. So he signed all 3, spent 1,000 on Burgess, £600 on Turnbull, and when he opened the door to get out, all the chairs were waiting there or upset, and he was just smiling. He had the smile on his face, and he was tapping his pocket to let them know that he had pocketed as many stars as he could. So that changed United completely. January 1st came, all of a sudden, United went from being a mid-table team to being the best team in the country. Now they had Billy Meredith, Bannister, who could feed him. They had Sandy Turnbull, who could score all the goals. George Wall, the figure on the other side. Charlie Roberts in the middle and the back. And even though they didn't have time to do much in the second half of the season, when 07-08 came along, they were the best team by far. They won 13 of the first 14 games, and just basically ran away with created a new points record. And that's how they became, that's how the golden era basically came along. It was from Mangnall going in there and beating everybody else, all those players.
Incredible story, that. The 1908 side, there was a pamphlet that was produced at the time, wasn't there? I mean, obviously you get all the paraphernalia for the cup final, but there was a pamphlet that was written about the 1908 team by an unpublished, by an unnamed author. And he described the characteristics of the side in 2 ways. He said they had greatness and unity. And the line that I love about this side was, never in the history of football has a team shown its greatness and superiority more than the United team since the dawn of season 1907-08, which speaks to the domination of that early run that you talked of there. The 2 greatest personalities in that side probably were Charlie Roberts, the captain, like you said, a scientific centre-half who was deemed the best in the UK, and Billy Meredith, of course, who was known as the game's first superstar. United still playing, a healthy number of Scottish players in there, so there's that scientific blend running through the side as well. And fittingly as well, another thing, we talked about this in the previous episode, we talked about Fred Ernest and his goal. I like that the goal in the 1909 FA Cup final was scored by Sandy Turnbull. We consider some of the triumphs of the late century, with Roy Keane scoring the goal, which won the United the Intercontinental Cup in Tokyo, or Wayne Rooney when he scored the decisive goal, which won the World Club Cup in 2008. You have a running theme of the heartbeat of the side, the workhorses, not necessarily the big stars, but they get their own day in the limelight and do something big for the side. And United, they always had this period of, the greatest sides would always contain an individual player. Busby would speak about it much later on. Duncan Edwards was probably the first star around which the rest would revolve. You had George Best, obviously wasn't going to be accommodated naturally into a side. He just sort of floated around there. And later on, you've got Eric Cantona, Cristiano Ronaldo as obvious players. And Billy Meredith, very much that pioneer in that trend, really. He was the first one, the superstar of his time. Had a very long association with United. He played until he was in his 40s and came back to coach for United because he was super fit. And although he does have this rich history with Manchester City and Manchester as a city, it's with United. He's kind of known, which says a lot about this period of time, really. And you mentioned the 1908 triumph, and there was also a Charity Shield when the Charity Shield was deemed a big trophy. and win another league trophy, but it's the FA Cup against Bristol City, which we win 1-0, which is seen as the definitive era, the definitive success of this side. And when you talk to anyone who's associated with the club, Martin Edwards, for example, he can reel this side off. He reels it off, and people can. It's a bit. You mentioned Burgess. It's a bit unfair on him because Hayes is in the side in the 1909 final. He's kind of replaced Burgess by that point. You would have thought he deserves a bit of a mention, but George Stacey's moved over to the other side. But yeah, I mean, that's set for this United side. It's a Manchester United manager with grand ambitions, backed by a chairman willing to facilitate them. They'd already moved to Old Trafford, all of these things. The future looks very rosy. We'll speak not about the 1910s and 20s. We'll leave that for a romantic optimist based in 1909. The characteristics that were there, I mean, that kind of character and glamour and class, those were characteristics that the club would adopt throughout the future. So it is only fair to give the people in control, as we have done in this episode, particularly Davis, who backed it financially, and Mangnall, who was the visionary as a secretary. And their due credit, especially that story that Charbel talks about getting the players. You can have the money all you want, but you've got to show the wherewithal to get there and beat the other secretaries, which Mangnall did, and obviously got United their first golden period in the process. That is the story of United's first golden period. Subscribe and check out some more episodes in the Football Taught by Matt Busby podcast to discover more about the tactical, philosophical and cultural identity and history of Manchester United.